Jai Hind children, let's discuss the third poetry from your literature textbook, The First Flight. The name of the poem is A Tiger in the Zoo. This particular poetry is written by Leslie Norris. When we talk about the poet, he was a prize-winning Welsh poet and a short story writer. He is considered as most important Welsh writers of the post-war period, and his literary works have won many prizes. His famous works are Finding Gold, The Loud Window, Felix Living Poet series, Ransoms, etc. The poem written by Leslie Norris explains the agony and helplessness of a caged tiger that lives in a zoo. The poet explains what his life could be if he had been a free animal. The poet has tried to explain about the condition of animals that are caged by human beings for their own fun. Let us read the poem. A Tiger in the Zoo. He stalks in his vivid stripes, the few steps of his cage, on paths of velvet quiet, in his quiet rage. He should be lurking in shadow, sliding through long grass, near the water hole where plum deer pass. He should be snarling around houses at the jungle's edge, baring his white fangs, his claws, terrorizing the village. But he is locked in a concrete cell, his strength behind bars, stalking the length of his cage, ignoring visitors. He hears the last toys at night, the patrolling cars, and stares with his brilliant eyes at the brilliant stars. Before we move on to the explanation, let's read the theme given in the textbook. This poem contrasts a tiger in the zoo with the tiger in its natural habitat. The poem moves from the zoo to the jungle and back again to the zoo. Please read the poetry several times before you move on to the explanation. Now read the first stanza. He stalks in his vivid stripes, the few steps of his cage, on paths of velvet quiet, in his quiet rage. Here, he refers to the tiger. Stalks means walks slowly. The tiger walks slowly. In his vivid stripes, vivid means clear. Stripes, the dark lines on the body of the tiger. So the tiger stalks or walks slowly with the few steps of his cage. Here, the poet describes the appearance of the tiger and its movements. The tiger can take only a few steps because the cage is too small and it is not easy to move in it. So, here the tiger takes his slow steps inside the cage. And how the tiger moves? On pads of velvet quiet in his quiet rage. Here pad means feet. For animals we use the word paws, P-A-W, paws. Here the poet says that one cannot hear the footsteps because the underside of the tiger's paw is as smooth as velvet, and so when he moves he won't create any sound. And it seems as if all the anger that the tiger has, here rage means anger, being caged and all, is also suppressed in the same way. The poet feels as if the tiger tries to control his anger by quietly walking in the limited area of his cage. And why the animal is angry? He is angry because he is caged. Now let's move on to the literary devices used in this stanza. First, rhyme scheme. See how each line ends? stripes, cage, quiet, rage. Here only cage and rage rhymes. So the rhyme scheme is A, B, C, B. So the rhyme scheme of this stanza is A, B, C, B. Now see, the poet has used the word he. Normally we use he for human beings. In the case of animals and all, we use it. So here the poetic device used is personification. You know what personification is, isn't it? Now, velvet quiet, on pads of velvet quiet. Here, the paws of the animal, the paws of this tiger is compared to velvet, which is very smooth. So the poetic device used here is metaphor. Now see the third line and the fourth line. The word quiet is repeated. So the poetic device is repetition. The last line, quiet rage. Rage means anger. Quiet means very silent. Both the words have opposite meanings, isn't it? So the poetic device is oxymoron. Use of adjectives opposite in meaning. Now look at the first line again. In his vivid stripes. I sound is repeated, isn't it? So the poetic device is assonance. Now the second stanza of the poem. He should be lurking in shadow, sliding through long grass near the waterhole where plum deer pass. So in this stanza, the poet imagines an alternate life for the tiger. He imagines what it would be like if the tiger lives in forest. So he should be lurking in shadow. Lurking means what? Hiding, to wait for its prey. Sliding through long grass. Sliding means moving smoothly through the long grass. So here the poet says that the tiger should be hiding itself behind long grass so that its prey will not be able to detect its movement. So in this way, the tiger should approach the waterhole where all the animals of the forest come to drink during sunny afternoons. There, the tiger will come face to face with a fat deer. Plum means fat. A fat deer for its consumption. Okay? Now we move on to the literary devices. Here only grass and past rhymes. And so the rhyme scheme used here is A, B, C, B. In the second line and the third line, no punctuation marks are used. And so the rhyme scheme used there is enjambment. Now look at the last line. The sound per, plum, pass. So per sound is repeated and so the poetic device is alliteration. Okay. Now let's move on to the third stanza. He should be snarling around houses at the jungle's edge, baring his white fangs, his claws, terrorizing the village. So here the poet says that if the tiger is free, that means if it is in the jungle, if it is in the forest, once in a while its day-to-day movements would lead to the houses located at the outskirts of the forest. There what it will do? It should be snarling. Snarling means the sound produced by the tiger. So it will make a horror sound. Okay? Baring his white fangs. Baring means showing. Okay, uncovered. Showing his fangs. Fangs means sharp tooth of animals. So here the poet says that in the outskirts of the forest when it reaches, he would terrorize the people with his sharp tooth and claws. And this would create fear among the people living there. See the literary devices used here. First rhyme scheme, edge and village rhymes. So the same rhyme scheme A, B, C, B. Now look at the word snarling. Snarling is a word which denotes a sound. So onomatopoeia. Now in the same line itself, should, around, houses. O sound is repeated, and that's why assonance. Now move on to the third line. His fangs, his claws. S sound is repeated, so consonants. Now the next stanza. But he is locked in a concrete cell, his strength behind bars, stalking the length of his cage, ignoring visitors. Here the poet talks about the reality of the tiger. Now the tiger is inside the cage. He is locked in a concrete cell. Since he is locked in a concrete cell, his strength is also behind the bars. He could just stalk in the cage. Now he ignores the visitors. Why? Because his power is restricted by the cage. So in this stanza also the same rhyme scheme is used, A, B, C, B. Now see, he is his strength on. So as throughout the poetry personification is there. Now see, he is locked, concrete, cell, E sound is repeated, so assonance. His strength, bars, S sound is repeated, so consonants. Behind bars, B sound is repeated, so alliteration. These are the poetic devices used here. Now we move on to the last stanza of the poetry. He hears the last voice at night, the patrolling cars, and stares with his brilliant eyes at the brilliant stars. Here the poet says that at night the tiger hears the sounds of the patrolling cars. Patrolling cars, actually these are vehicles of police which are used to guard at night. So the poet says that at night the tiger hears the sounds of these cars. And then he stares at the shining stars with his shining eyes. Brilliant here means shining eyes. The poet wants to say that the tiger is sad, and as he is confined in the cage, he cannot do anything. Therefore, he stares at the stars in the night and tries to divert his thoughts towards them. Here also the same rhyme scheme is used, A, B, C, B. Now, he hears. Her sound is repeated, so alliteration. Now, third line, with his brilliant eyes. I sound is repeated, so assonance. As you know, the last two lines without any punctuation marks, it continues, so enjambment. Now, the word brilliant is repeated in these two lines, so repetition. So these are the poetic devices used in this stanza. So in this poem, the poet gives a message to his readers that a tiger is better suited to be living in the forest rather than living in a zoo. In the jungle, the tiger, the wild animal, can roam freely and expresses his power. In the forest, he can hunt when he requests food. On the other hand, in the zoo, the space is too short for a tiger to roam. His movement is restricted and made him a prisoner in the cage of the zoo. Here, the tiger lives an unnatural and unhappy life and becomes helpless. Before we wind up, let's read the summary of A Tiger in the Zoo. This poem contrasts a tiger in the zoo with the tiger in its natural habitat. The poem moves from the zoo to the jungle and back again to the zoo. The poem provides a contrast in the mood and environment of a tiger when he is in the zoo and a tiger when he is in the forest. In the zoo, he has no freedom. He is kept in a cemented cell behind the bars. He feels angry, frustrated, and helpless. This reminds him of his natural habitat, his hiding and sliding in the long grass near the waterhole and pouncing upon the fat deer. The way he terrorized the villagers, displaying his sharp teeth and claws. At night in the zoo, he hears the sounds of patrolling cars. The tiger in the zoo appears helpless as to be a mere showpiece and source of entertainment to people. The poet wants to convey that it is cruel to keep wild animals in small enclosures of the zoo, away from their natural habitat. They feel angry, helpless, and unhappy in the cage. He pays no attention to the visitors who came to watch him. In the silence of the night, he stares at the brilliant stars with his bright eyes. So that's the end of this poetry. Hope you have understood everything. Thank you.